I've been cooking at Waystation Aldrin for 11 years. Before that, 6 on the Resolute, 4 on a forward listening post so small we called the galley the closet. 21 years of feeding people who were tired, or bored, or angry about something that had nothing to do with the food. You learn things in a mess hall. Not because anyone tells you, because everyone forgets you're there. The Dramathi arrived on a Tuesday. 7 of them, plus a logistics train of sealed containers that their lower caste handlers unloaded in strict sequence. Largest first, smallest last, each one tagged with chromatic caste markers I didn't recognize at the time. Tall species, smooth-skinned, narrow through the shoulders, precise in every movement. Each one had a patch of chromatophore tissue at the temple that shifted color depending on caste. The lead delegates pulsed a layered violet gold. His technical staff ran a flat teal. The support caste didn't pulse at all. They were here for a trade route negotiation. Standard coalition business. I'd fed a dozen species through the same process. They'd sit in the briefing room for 2 days, sign something, eat whatever I put in front of them, and leave. The Dramathi were different. Not because they were difficult. Because they were organized. The first thing their lead delegate did, before the formal introductions, before the tour, was ask Commander Desta where the officer dining suite was. Desta looked at him. "We don't have one." The delegate, his name was Ovith Shen, first echelon negotiator, and he introduced himself with all of that every single time, paused. His chromatophore patch flickered. "Where do your ranked personnel eat?" "Here," Desta said. He gestured at the mess hall. Long tables, steel benches, overhead lighting that hummed on the left side, because I'd filed a maintenance ticket 3 weeks ago, and it was still in the queue. Captain Lamb was eating noodle soup 2 seats from Petty Officer Daly, who was arguing with a cargo tech about a docking seal. Ovith Shen looked at the room the way you'd look at someone who just told you they slept on the floor by choice. "Charming," he said. His delegation set up their own arrangement within the hour. 5 tables, partitioned by portable screens they'd brought in their logistics train, purpose-built, collapsible caste dividers with chromatic edging that matched each rank's temple frequency. High caste ate first, technical caste second, support caste third, administrative fourth, logistics fifth. Each table was served in order, and no one from a lower caste entered the partitioned area until the table above them had finished and left. I served them all the same soup. The technical caste table got theirs 11 minutes after the high caste table. Same batch, same ladle. The only difference was temperature, so I reheated it. Nobody thanked me. The lower castes weren't permitted to acknowledge a food service worker directly. The logistics caste handler, the one who'd unloaded the containers, ate last, alone, facing the wall. He held his bowl with both hands and didn't look up until the partition screen was replaced behind him. The whole production took 1 hour and 14 minutes. I timed it, because I time everything in my kitchen. Ovith Shen mentioned the mess hall arrangement to Commander Desta twice more during the first day. Once in the corridor. "Your crew's feeding structure is remarkably undifferentiated," and once during a session break, watching Captain Lamb carry her own tray to the wash rack. On a Dramathi installation, a first echelon officer would never handle serviceware. It would be, he searched for the polite word, confusing. Desta nodded. "We manage." The negotiations ran into trouble on day 2. Not the diplomatic kind. Ovith Shen was smooth, and the human trade team matched him clause for clause. The problem was technical. The proposed route threaded through the Tesseran Straits, a corridor with a magnetic variance band that shifted seasonally. The current figures mattered for cargo navigation. Get them wrong, and transit costs doubled, because haulers would need to replot mid-corridor. The Dramathi had surveyed the straits 6 months earlier, but the updated figures hadn't made it into Ovith Shen's briefing folio. I know this because I heard it first. His technical caste specialists, 2 of them, identically dressed in flat teal uniforms, ate at the third table every meal. They sat across from each other, spoke quietly, and never once looked at anyone outside their partition. On the second evening, while I was refilling their water, one of them said to the other, in lightly accented standard, not their own language, that the variance data from the Tesserine survey was 8 months stale, and the seasonal shift had already moved the safe transit window by 6 hours. He said it like weather, a known fact, obvious to anyone in the technical caste. Not a secret, just something that hadn't been asked about, because no one above him had phrased the right question, and he was not permitted to offer information upward unbidden. The other specialist nodded, took a sip of water, and changed the subject to a calibration procedure. Neither of them looked toward the high caste partition. The screen between their table and Ovith Shen's might as well have been a bulkhead. I set down the pitcher and went back to the serving line. At dinner, I sat across from Lieutenant Okafor, navigation logistics for the trade office, and mentioned what I'd heard. Not formally. I didn't file anything. I said, the Dramathi tech people think the Tesserine variance data is out of date. 6-hour shift in the transit window. Okafor put down her fork. How stale? 8 months. She nodded, picked the fork back up, finished her rice. 20 minutes later, she was in Commander Desta's office. I know, because Desta came through afterward for coffee and gave me the nod. The one that means thank you without saying it. Because saying it would make it formal. And the whole point is that it isn't. The next morning, the human team opened the session by proposing a revised transit schedule that accounted for the seasonal variance shift. Ovith Shen stopped mid-sentence. His chromatophore patch went flat. Not flickering, not pulsing, flat. I've served enough species to know what that looks like on a Dramathi. It's the equivalent of a blink you can't take back. How did you obtain the updated variance data? He asked. Desta didn't pause. Our cook mentioned it. Ovith Shen looked at Desta, looked at me. I was in the serving window, ladling the morning broth, looked back at Desta. Your cook. She hears things, Desta said. It's a mess hall. I don't know what happened in the next 40 minutes. I was prepping lunch, but afterward, Ovith Shen came to the serving window alone, without his caste escort, and stood there for a long time. He looked at the long tables, the steel benches, Captain Lamb eating noodle soup again, 2 seats from Daly, who was arguing with the same cargo tech about a different docking seal. Okafor reading a maintenance manual with her boots up. A junior analyst from the trade office explaining something to an engineer using a napkin and a pen. He looked at his own partition section. 5 tables, 5 screens, 5 castes eating in sequence, none of them speaking to the caste on either side. His technical specialists sitting in silence with exactly the data his negotiating team needed, waiting to be asked a question that nobody above them knew to ask. This is how your crew communicates, he said. Not a question. This is how we eat, I said. The communicating is a side effect. His patch flickered, 1 pulse, very faint. I'd never seen a Dramathi do that in response to a joke, but I think that's what it was. He asked for a second bowl of soup. High caste Dramathi eat once per meal, a precisely measured portion. I'd been briefed on the protocol. He asked for a second bowl, and I gave it to him, and he carried it past the partition screens to the long table and sat down between Daly and the cargo tech. He didn't say anything. He ate the soup. Daly glanced at him, nodded once, and went back to arguing about the docking seal. The negotiations closed that afternoon. The revised schedule held. The variance data was formally incorporated into the route agreement, credited in the final document to updated survey intelligence provided by the host installation's operational staff. Desta let that language stand. So did I. Before he boarded his shuttle, Ovith Shen stopped at the mess hall entrance. His delegation was already sealed inside their transport. 5 compartments, 5 castes, partitioned and separate. He stood in the doorway and looked at the long table one more time. Cook, he said. Delegate, I said. He left. That evening I wiped down the long table and stacked the benches, same as every night. Okafor came in late for coffee and asked if I'd heard anything interesting today. I told her the docking seal was still leaking. She laughed. That's the thing about the mess hall. It doesn't file reports. It doesn't hold briefings. It just feeds people, and the rest takes care of itself.